All right, we are live.
All right.
Perfect. So let me pull up that relevance page really quick. So we need to talk about, first we need to go over the model. Do you guys want to talk about the stages of the model? Trans-theoretical stages of change.
I really like
this model is very easy to understand because
I agree.
It's it's just kind of common sense.
Yeah.
I think
you can,
I just feel like every week.
it's also the
Sorry.
aspect that I think all of us have gone through these stages ourselves, so it's very relatable. It's really easy for us to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
I feel like every week it gets a little bit easier. Like last week I was like, okay, I think I can get that model. I get it. I can see how people would use it. And then this week I'm like, oh, that one's a lot easier than the last one.
Yeah.
I think you could find like exactly where, like any goal you have right now, you're kind of like, I'm in the contemplation stage. And
yeah, well, and it's such a relatable model. You can apply it to anything. Yeah.
Well, and I think a big part of it is just the words that they use that are easy to understand. They're not like long words that are complicated in like their definition, when these are just like, okay, well, contemplation is just thinking. So that's easy to understand. Preparation, you're planning. Action is just action, and maintenance, you like think of like a maintenance worker.
You're just doing things to keep it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked that a lot. So I guess we can go over to each of the stages if we need. I mean, if we need to take up a little bit of time here. So let's see. Well, the first stage is pre-contemplation, right? And that's where a person is who there is like a problem behavior or something, but they have no intention, or even sometimes there's not even a desire to take action. Yeah, within the next 6 months, I think is what I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to move past that one, you really need to like make them aware or them about their actions.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where a lot of these other interventions come in. Like, you know, you want to be able to understand, well, why don't they want to change? Like, what is keeping them from changing, or what are their barriers and stuff like that.
I think a big part of like pre-contemplation is that they may know like the behavior they should do, but they don't have maybe the motivation or the full information of what could happen. Because a big part of it is like, oh, like, okay, well, I know what that problem is and I know the behavior, but what's it going to do me good? What's going to help me with it?
Yeah. Well, and also like a lot of the time, like I'm looking at the example that was on the chapter overview or whatever it was, and it was talking about like the group of gamers or whatever that lived on campus, and they didn't feel like it affected them negatively at all. Like it was the way that they viewed it, that they were like, it's not hurting me, you know, even though it was like their grades weren't good and everything. They didn't feel like it was hurting them.
Yeah, and I think like when you break down each of the stages into the processes, I like how it's called a process, because it's not like a step that you take. It's something that's happening. That
relation between the video games and their grades.
It's not something that will happen overnight. There's different, like you said, I mean, that's what they're called, stages.
Stages, yeah. So the processes that go along with pre-contemplation are kind of 2 and 2. Consciousness is increasing your awareness that there is an unhealthy behavior and then there are unhealthy consequences, and then dramatic relief, where you're actually experiencing, I just have it in my notes all in a list, so I'm not sure which goes with which stage, but dramatic relief is like experiencing the negative emotions and become aware of them. And that makes change seem like a better idea.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, I think until you feel those negative emotions or that the behavior is negative, you're probably just going to stay in that pre-contemplation stage.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people do. A lot of people just go their whole lives, and the only thing that snaps them out of pre-contemplation is like when they have a heart attack or when they become diabetic or something like that, like it's unfortunate, but that's sometimes what it takes to get people to start thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like have to be humbled.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I kind of feel like the processes of the stages, they kind of don't have an order because it differs from person to person. So like for me, it'd probably be like I would be more going from pre-contemplation to contemplation because of my environment reevaluation, while maybe my brother could just have the dramatic relief change him into those stages.
Yeah. And it's like we've talked about before, it's always different. Everybody's different, Like you might have an event that happens to one person that gets them start thinking like in the contemplation stage, but you could have another person that goes through the exact same event and they won't make that connection and they need to make a change.
Something that it's kind of a question of mine, and maybe we can save this for the end, but in the book or in that reading in chapter 5, it says like no intention to take action in 6 months, and then you intend to take action in 6 months. Is there ever, like you were saying, some people are different. Is there ever a time where somebody might go through the stages quicker or longer?
Probably. I mean, there could be a life event that happens after 3 months that gets them thinking about it, or, but I guess it depends on if they have no intention to change, like within their own control. Does that make sense? So like there are other things that can happen that can get them to start thinking about it, but I think that if they were just to do it on their own, maybe it would be the 6 month time frame, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I just think about our job as health educators and what the role that we actually play in these people's lives may be. We're trying to move them through the stages so we can actually help them change, and sometimes our job is just trying to shorten that time frame. It's still going to take them time to get through pre-contemplation and contemplation and start to prepare and then keep moving on, but our job sometimes is just to help shorten that span to a couple weeks or even a day. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. Well, I definitely agree. Yeah. Well, I mean, what's the point of us being here as professionals if we can't help people make a change? Yeah.
I think it might come down to like the balance. It talks about the balance between costs and benefits of change, and so if they can do the pros and cons and see that the pros way outweigh the cons, and like, you're given 6 months to live, unless if they can see that the pros outweigh the cons, then maybe they would go through a bit quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's I'm glad you mentioned the pro and cons.
Contemplation stage, they're in there like for long periods of time. So they actually start prepared to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So are we ready to move on to contemplation? I mean, we've kind of been talking about both, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to jump around.
Yeah, I know. Well, it just makes more of a natural conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
So contemplation, I have my notes up here, and it says it intends to the person intends to take action within the next 6 months. So yeah.
And that basically 1 month into it, they don't have to wait that full.
Totally.
So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, something
I think the time.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I think the time frame is more of like the majority of people do this, but it's not like a set thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like for me, like with my eating habits, it takes me like having the lowest of low days to change just in a day, while someone might take like 3 weeks to change their diet. So, I mean, I think that the time frame is there to see if they're part of the majority, but I don't think most people are.
It's probably just like the gold standard, like the reference that they've set, you know?
Yeah, and I think when you go to like make a goal for yourself, you don't say, well, in 7 months, I'm going to start exercising, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing that's good about 6 months, because it's like, it's less than a year, but it's still long term, I guess.
Yeah, the way I wrote
So it gives people a chance to adjust.
The way that I wrote it in my notes was considering change in the distant future.
Yeah.
In the near distant future.
Exactly.
You're aware of it. You know the pros of changing and the cons of not changing, but it's still out there.
It's out there.
Yeah.
I think it's something that like it keeps nagging at you like every day or every few days that you're kind of reminded again, like, oh, I should really change this. Or so you start, you know, looking up diets, or you start looking at certain recipes, but you haven't really like jumped into doing it yet.
Yeah.
But I guess that's kind of like preparation too. You're intending, but you're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So you find
I think that's where a lot of people are, you know, like they want to change, they want to eat better, they want to exercise, but there's still just those barriers that make it hard for them, or that they use as an excuse. Like they know it's good for them and they know they should be doing it, but it's just hard to get started, I guess, you know, like they want to do it, but it's hard.
That's the self reevaluation. Plays a part right there. Jumping through that stage.
Yeah. So
Can anyone else hear Megan? She sent a message saying that.
Oh no.
She's there. She can hear us, I think, but
Okay. Megan, if you can hear us, sometimes it helps to log off and then log back on, and then for some reason you can start hearing again. That happened to me last week, and it happened to Mercedes this week, so give that a try.
yeah, she can hear everyone.
Okay, yeah, she can hear us. Okay.
That's always fun. Your input is appreciated.
Type it in the chat. Raise your hand. Oh, I see. Now the chat's just popped up for me. Mine's got a bad lag on it. It's gotta be my Wi-Fi. All right.
Megan, can you hear us? I mean, obviously, but say something.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really, really quiet.
Okay, well, I don't know why. Okay, hold on.
That's a little better.
That's good.
That's better.
Better?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm not sure why my computer is acting up today.
Okay. It's okay. All right. So preparation is when the person intends to take action within the next 30 days and has taken some behavioral steps in this direction. So this is somebody who goes to get like a gym membership, and they are preparing, and they go, and I don't know, they're like really invested in it, I guess, before they begin.
Well, you know, in my personal experience, I wrote down for this in my notes, person may also be terrified of changing.
It's
Because
true.
now it's like, oh no, it's becoming real. Like I have to do this now, and it's just like they're a little bit scared. And this can be where people quit. You know, people have started acting, they've started making plans, they've committed to some things, and then they freak out and they get scared.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Or they realize how difficult it is. It's more difficult than they expected it to be.
Yeah, or they're like not ready
I
to
think-
change. I know so many people who like they want to change, but they're just not ready to do it yet. They're like, well, I'll do it in a couple of years, and later I'll do it. So
Yeah, I think that's where the self-efficacy really, like as a, you know, doing a health promotion. And it says that these are the people that should be recruited for action-oriented programs. So I think if they start building that self-efficacy, that this is where either you make it or break it type thing.
Yeah.
This is where you win them or lose them.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
this early stage.
Speaking of self-efficacy, I mean, I know there are some people that are like more prone to it and that are just good at it. But I mean, I know we've already talked about self-efficacy a few chapters ago, but do you think that a person who is not good with self-efficacy can develop it eventually, or do you think that they are just kind of prone to being like quitters their whole lives?
I think they can, but it's going to be more difficult for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to always have that kind of negative at the back of their mind.
The way that the presentation kind of worded it or presented it was that self-efficacy plays a role in the confidence that people have in high-risk situations to avoid relapse. And so I think about, I mean, maybe somebody's not feeling great about high-risk situations, but they can start pretty well with low-risk situations. They're doing really good at not relapsing or giving into temptation and to perform the old behavior at any given low-risk moment. And so just, you know, with people like that, people who aren't naturally just like, oh, I got this, you know, you really have to build on those moments and add on to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to know that like relapse is normal. Like, don't get discouraged and just quit because you slipped up, you know. Keep going. Like we were talking about this, I'm in a nutrition class actually too. And this week we're talking about like energy balance and stuff and dieting and people who are on like yo-yo diets, and they diet and they do really good, but then one day they eat a piece of cake. So instead of being like, well, I treated myself, that was great, they give up and they're like, well, I ate a piece of cake, I already messed up for the day, I might as well just eat the rest of the cake, you know. So it's okay if you slip up. It's just a matter of making sure that you acknowledge it and that it's normal, and you just keep going from there. You don't let it drag you down.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, I was in this program called the Center for International Business and Communication Studies. And like you start freshman year, so you're 14, 15 years old, and you have to try and you have to start public speaking more and more every single year. So, wow. And I was terrified. Like I was so shy in high school. I didn't want to talk to anyone. So having to public speak was terrible. But what they did was they started off with a 30-second talk or a 30-second public speak, and it's just about yourself. So you're like, okay, you can do that. It's little steps. And then you go to the minute and you talk about, for a minute, you talk about a hero. And then you went to 5 minutes to talk about, I think it was like a place of geography or something. And then it went to 10 minutes, and then it went to 15, and then it went to 30.
Slowly building.
And I think that's like the biggest thing is that self-efficacy, you may not have it in a certain area, but you're able to slowly build it up, kind of like a baby slowly builds up their muscles to walk, or just like little things like that. Like anything can be learned if they're open-minded to it. Yeah. Like now, I can speak for like 2 to 3 hours to my softball team, or I can speak 2 to 3 hours in church. So it's like now I'm so used to it, and I have that self-efficacy because I started small.
That's so awesome. I love that. Like the idea of baby steps, you know, just build on what you can do.
Yeah.
When I worked at Badger Creek, the idea of progression is huge. But the idea of initiating some sort of action was also really important. You know, there's the tower, you have to climb to the top and jump off. If somebody was terrified, you have them step onto the first 2 or 3 steps of the ladder and just let them hang there. And when you start somebody on the ladder and then you let them back down, you let somebody else go on and they go all the way to the top, the person that started on the ladder is going to want to go up even higher, and it just keeps building up. And so progression is a big idea, I think.
I can see it's possible.
In preparation and action, it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a great, I'm glad that we've talked about that, because that goes right into the action part of it, doesn't it? Like just start small. And it's like we've talked about, you don't have to change that behavior overnight. If you want to start exercising more, you don't have to go to the gym 6 days a week, you know, like go for 2 days a week, or go for 20 minutes a day, you know, just make it something that's attainable, that's not going to make you feel overwhelmed. And then build
So
from
that's
it.
interesting. Because I teach my softball girls. So every Monday we talk about like the mental side of softball, the mental side of life. And I teach my girls, have you guys ever heard of SMART goals, the acronym?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what, like, so S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for attainable, M-A-R, R stands for realistic, and T stands for time.
Mm-hmm.
So you want your goal to be specific. So if you want to like change like how you exercise, so a specific goal could be, okay, I want to exercise 20 minutes 3 times a week. That's measurable because you can check it off saying like you've done it. And it's like, yeah, SMA. It's attainable because like if you're starting small, it'll be easy to start off that way. If you start off saying, oh, I'm going to exercise 7 days a week for 2 hours a day, you're not going to be able to because you haven't progressed to that yet. So that isn't as attainable as doing 20 minutes 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
SMAR. It's realistic because if you have the gym membership, like if you're in the preparation stage, you have the gym membership, you have the car to get to the gym, you have like the materials in order for you to know what to do at the gym. And then so a time is like a timetable. So how many weeks are you going to do this before you progress in the overall goal or objective that you want? So let's say you do the 20 minutes 3 times a week. Let's say I want to do that for 2 weeks and then make it a little more difficult for me. So that's like the timetable. You want it time-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that because that's such a good resource for setting goals. And yeah, I like that.
Well, and what's really cool is like it pretty much goes like that SMART kind of is like your preparation. You set your goals, you set your things that you want, because if you have that preparation, the action and the maintenance are a lot easier to handle than if you didn't have that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, people setting New Year's resolutions and they always fail because they're just like, okay, I'm going to start exercising every day, but they never really sit down and make a plan and make the small little goals that are attainable, you know, realistic things. So they fail quicker.
I think I read somewhere that like more than half the people who make goals at the new year won't stay with their goals within 2 to 3 weeks after that day.
By February, they're all thrown out the window.
Yeah.
I know, it's so funny. It's so funny because like you go to a gym or something on like in January and it's just so busy and so slammed. Yeah, it's packed. And then by February, there's hardly anybody even in there. And I like the same thing with Mondays. Like everybody goes in on Monday, but by Wednesday or Thursday, like there's not very many people in there.
Well, and they're all sitting there right now, right before Thanksgiving, thinking, okay, starting January 1st, you know, they're not really sitting down and preparing.
Yeah. So I think, okay, the big difference between action and maintenance is action is the behavior has been changed, but it's been less than 6 months. It's the time frame thing again. And then maintenance means that the behavior has been going on, the new behavior has been going on for more than 6 months.
I like how
then if we want to go into maintenance, then that's, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, in between the preparation action, how it says self-liberation. I think that's just make that firm commitment. How liberating it is to, you're actually going to do this. Let's do it type of thing.
Yeah.
What I really liked about maintenance has like, I mean, it had like 2 pages or 3 pages on that presentation of different processes that help. So there is a lot that you can do to help maintain your behavior.
Yeah. Definitely.
We can talk about those if you want.
Has anyone been through or helped someone with the stop smoking that the church does? The program.
The AARP, or did they have a separate one specifically for smoking?
It's been like 10 to 15 years. I don't know. I thought it was like the stop smoking, but it had like that, like under stimulus control, removing reminders or cues to engage in unhealthy behavior. So you had to go in, get rid of all your ashtrays, any lighters. You had to wash your car inside out so it didn't smell like cigarettes. And you had to get rid of any kind of triggers that you see that, remind you, those brings those cravings back up. Or kind of like if you're dieting, you need to go through and get rid of all of your favorite snacks. So you need to, clean house.
It doesn't mean eating it all before you start your diet either.
No, and that's the world. Because like on Monday, that means Saturday, Sunday, I'm like binge eating because I don't throw it away.
Count, right?
Package of Oreos, I can't throw that away. Are you crazy? No, eat it all.
I had that just like last week. I was having such a hard time because I like to eat frosting. And I was having such a hard time because I bought like 2 or 3 of them and I had already eaten one in like 2 days. And I look at I'm seriously staring at these cans of frosting and I'm like, Mercedes, you just need to throw at least one away. So I threw one away in the morning. I was so proud of myself. And then throughout the day, it's like lingering in my mind. I'm like, I have that frosting in the cupboard. What should I do with it?
It's like
I'm finally like, it really is. It's so sad. And I'm like, finally like, okay. So it got to the end of the day and I'm like, okay, let me just I'm going to just go to sleep and like bring my courage back again to throw it away. And I finally threw it away and I was proud of myself. But it's like those little things, they're so just the things that are addictive to you are so hard to like stay away from when they're right there.
Especially like when you're stressed out, you're like, oh my gosh, if my day would go so much better if I could just have blank.
Yep.
And it's like when you throw it away, you have to like throw something nasty on top of it. Because if it's a perfectly good package of Oreos still sitting there, they're all still clean. It's just sitting at the top. I'm not saying I've ever done that. I'm just saying, like, throw some baby over the top of it.
No. Like, it was a good thing it was trash day because the trash cans are out. So I literally took these cans of frosting, went outside, and threw them in the trash bin so I wouldn't take them out. And I was
right there, self-liberation. Not be a slave to anymore. Cans of frosting.
I know, right?
But it's like if I know it's there, even if I'm like at work, but I know it's there at home, like I will think about it all day long. So right when I come home, it's like the first thing I go to. Like it's there. I know it's in there. I was really mad when I was remembering a piece of cheesecake and I came home and found out that my family had eaten it. I was thinking about that all day long.
That's really funny. So as we're talking about this, I'm like thinking about all the things I like, and it's like, oh man.
So that stimulus control, yes, those cues, reminders.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. What were we on? We were on.
Can we just go to the second part? Because I feel like we've talked about all of them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Except for termination, which is no temptation to relapse and 100% confidence.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on.
That sounds great.
Right?
I don't think I've ever been there.
That is full on.
No more cans of frosting.
No more.
Yeah, it's like you don't even buy the frosting, even if you're right next to it.
No. And that is really hard to do, guys.
You have to substitute it with something else.
I substitute it with a chocolate protein shake.
That's better.
Perfect.
There you go.
Okay, so step 2.
There you
go. Okay. Part 2, I mean. So we have to look at these 2 scenarios, and it's the scenarios that it also shared at the beginning of the lesson. Do you want me to read them? Does anybody else have it pulled up? I have it right here if you want.
I have it pulled up, yeah.
Okay, do you want to read it, Sean?
Yeah, I do too.
Say what?
Do you want to read this scenario?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Number 1, you are a health educator on the BYU iCampus working with a group of young men who are spending in excess of 16 to 20 hours per week playing violent video games. These young men are struggling academically at school. Upon initial interview with these young men, none of them feel they have a problem and are happy with the amount of time they spend gaming. And then number 2, scenario 2, you are a health educator on the BYU iCampus. Your roommate or spouse is struggling with depressive symptoms but is not seeking help. How do you use the trans-theoretical stages of change model to develop interventions centered on the processes that move him or her through the stages? And then, I don't know what's in parentheses. I don't know if that was important, but
Yeah, just do your research on mental health issues and not think that you're just can tell them get over it, move on, kind of thing.
I think
that is
a really
the last
big barrier
to do.
Yeah, it's all mental. Just tell yourself you're going to be fine and you're happy.
Someone who's
but
gone through
sometimes-
mental illnesses, like that is the worst thing you could ever do with someone who has something like that.
It kind of just like dismisses it like it's nothing when it's something you're really struggling with. Like
It's
if it was
hard
that
to
simple, believe me, I would have done it.
It's hard because sometimes you can't even like really explain it in a way they understand. It's just something you feel or something you're going through, and it's like they're like, well, just don't feel that way. I don't want to feel this way. I can't control it. Like it's so frustrating sometimes. Like you just don't understand.
Yeah, it's because I suffered from depression, anxiety, and panic disorders for like 5 to 6 years, and I still suffer from depression and anxiety. And it's like throughout the whole time at the beginning, I'm like, I didn't even know what was going on. So I'm like, something's going on, but I don't know what's going on. People like, so I played softball for BYU for my first few years of college. And so like this is going on, and my coach calls me in. He's like, "So what's wrong?" I'm like, "I just feel depressed. I don't know." And he's just like, "Well, stop being depressed." I'm like, "Well, thanks." And I just started bawling in front of him because I didn't know how am I supposed to do that if you don't even know what to do?
Yeah, like, well, if you know the trick, tell me the trick so that I can. That must have been so hard.
Changing my shirt to a different color. I mean, it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't even pinpoint what it is that's putting you in that mood. So I think that's a scenario. I mean, I know the young man versus video games. I mean, that's a huge thing right now. But the mental health, all those issues that are coming from that lately, that's a hot topic right there.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yes.
So as health educators, we figure out that's probably going to be an area that you work with a lot.
Yeah, and what makes it difficult is it's not, when you think about the stages of change, it's really easy to think about like quitting smoking or quitting diets or not looking at pornography or whatever it is. But the people who play video games honestly don't feel like video games is a problem. They don't see it as a negative action in their life. So you're starting on square one. You have to show them the pros and cons. You have to make them aware of what's happening.
The thing that's crazy about this situation is it says right there that they're struggling academically at school. And I don't know if they're not making the connection.
Yeah, they're still not making the connection.
Yeah, or if they're just like, well, it's not that important to me or something,
I've had roommates almost every semester where, this is a huge problem. I remember one a couple of semesters ago. He was in his room. I probably saw him 1 hour a week. And he had been in school since 2007. And he had like 40 credits because he just kept failing his classes, but then he'd like drop his classes and stuff just because he wanted to play video games. And he'd play all night long. He'd sleep till 6 or 7 in the evening, and then he'd wake up and play video games again until the next morning. And it was just like,
wow.
And it was so hard because one, you wanted to talk to him and be like, look, this is a problem, but it was hard to even just get into his life in any way.
Yeah.
And then 2, he didn't feel like it was a problem. He was like, oh, I could do this the rest of my life, you know? It was like,
But
okay.
it is
Very-
a problem. Look how long you've been here.
Mhm.
yeah. It's like, you know,
Very addicting.
yeah, I mean, he was never like gonna go pro with gaming or anything. And I know a lot of gamers are like, oh, I'm gonna go pro. This is gonna be my job. And it's like, not everyone can do that.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I'd be a pro snowboarder if I wanted to, but I missed the ball on that one. But
I work with
Yeah.
high functioning autistic, and we do like career things, you know, based on your interests, and all of them want to either get paid to play video games, or they want to work for the video game company as an animator and make the video games. So it's like, okay, yes, but every teenager right now wants to do that. You know, let's try to focus on something outside of them. They just don't see it. Like that's their life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
yeah, so how would you apply this model then to help them? So I guess so we get to choose which one we want to do. We choose either the video gaming or the depression, and then we develop interventions that help them move through that.
Mm-hmm.
Discuss how you can apply it.
Yeah.
Which one do you guys want to do?
I don't know.
They're both really good.
I know.
Mhm.
Well, it's just, we have to look at it like scenario 1 is a group, right? A group of young men. And then scenario 2 is an individual. So that's going to be different too.
Yeah. It's true. Well, did anyone already do the assignment?
No, I haven't done it yet.
Not yet.
I haven't, but if I were to do it, I would pick scenario number 2. Just
Yeah, that's
because
what I was gonna do it on.
I feel like,
to them. Help
I
you
don't
guys
know,
out.
I feel like it's something that would be easier to plan interventions for, because I don't know, the guys in scenario number 1 seem super stubborn. I don't know.
That's my little brother for you.
Then you know,
So scenario 2, we can do that one.
Okay, let me pull this page up.
So pre-contemplation. What's interesting is with depressive symptoms, it says, so they're struggling with depressive symptoms, but it doesn't say they're struggling with depression, which makes me think they don't know it. They don't know that they're in depression.
So, I know for me, I was like, if I applied this model to like,
go ahead.
To like what I went through, I was pretty much in the pre-contemplation stage since from like however long I can remember when I was young to about 2013. So I was born in 94. So from maybe like 2005 to like 2013, I was in the pre-contemplation stage because I didn't know what was going on. I would have like, so for me, it was my emotions that were going up and down. I'd be happy one minute, and all of a sudden, for some odd reason, I'd start crying over literally nothing. And then I would just be ecstatic for like something that would just be weird. Like it was very odd to go through. And so like I got to a point where like I realized, look, this is ruining my life, just having these emotions go up and down, up and down. So I finally like went to a doctor. Like that was just the first step. I went to a doctor and they looked me over, had me take some tests. And this was when I was at BYU playing softball. So I did this without anyone knowing. I did it all by myself because I didn't want anyone realizing if I did have something, like I wanted to be the one to tell someone. So I finally like So that was kind of like me being in the preparation stage. I was finally realizing, okay, I made the appointment. Like, I need to go. So I finally did it. And when I realized I had it, or when they finally diagnosed me with like depression and stuff, it was, even though it was like you realizing, oh, like you have a mental illness, it was like self-liberating. Just because I had like finally like I finally knew what was going on.
Right.
I knew why I was feeling these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
put a
so, yeah, that's the hardest thing is when you don't know what's going on and you don't have a name for it.
I like how you
So-
mentioned how it's like self-liberating because it's kind of weird. It's like interesting to see the differences because I was diagnosed with anxiety at like a really young age,
Mhm.
and I was really young. I didn't even really know what anxiety was. I was like
Yeah.
9 or 10 at the time, and they're like, "Oh, we'll give you some medication," and I'm like, "Oh, medication? Like I'm crazy. Something's wrong with me." Like they didn't
Yeah.
explain that self enough. So, it depends like where how different points in our life. Like I was a kid and I was like, I don't want this. This wasn't anything, but like for you, after you've been so
I was
long,
a college student.
yeah, you were like, oh, I know now. But for me as a kid, I was like, what, why? And it's funny to see how at different points in our lives, we can have different reactions to things.
Like it had a negative connotation when you were younger.
Yeah.
Like, is there something wrong with me? But I don't,
I think a big part of that now is like nowadays people are more willing to accept that people are having like internal problems, not just physical problems, rather than like before all of that, like when I would tell my mom, like, Mom, I just don't feel right. I don't feel like myself. She'd be like, oh, we'll just get over it. Like you just like go read scriptures, go do that, go do something good. Even though like I'd try it, it just never worked. And I think that information on like what things are and like I guess the resources that we have now compared to then kind of give more leniency or a better perception of like what mental illness is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's gotten kind of more like more information has been out there about it because this was way back when, and I was really young and so I hadn't really heard about it and my friends hadn't really heard about it, so all we've heard were kind of like these negative things. So I felt like okay, this is crazy. I can't tell anybody about it. It was secretive. No one could know, and I had to like hide it from everybody. And like the doctors didn't do a really good job of explaining what it was and like letting me know that it's normal. It's okay to have these feelings and so the longest time I wouldn't take my medication because I was like, I don't want medication to help me get through my day because they've given me some ones that everyday pills. So I'm like, I don't feel this every day. It wasn't until years later. I mean, this was probably like 3 years ago when I went back because I didn't want medication. I was like, I don't want it, but it was getting worse again. And they're like, well, you have situational anxiety where it's not like every day. It's only when you get put into a situation. So they're like, we're gonna give you this new pill, and they explained it better to me this time. It was like it's crazy how like different years with more information, more technology and stuff, it changes.
Yeah. And I think in that pre-contemplation stage, that's kind of where I kind of place the scenario. The intervention of like health education strategies, like let them, make them aware of what depression is, what are the signs and symptoms, are you experiencing any of these? Do you ever feel like this at times? Just educating on what it is.
I think that's like the only intervention that could really like move them from pre-contemplation to like contemplation and preparation. Because like during like when I was like junior, senior in high school and then going into like college, like I would research my symptoms like every week. Like, okay, what am I supposed to do? What could I do this? What could I do that? Could I do that? So I think just educating or just getting, like you said, the information out is like really for me, the only way like to move them through the stages.
So
What was it?
I had the thought of I know this is one of the processes, but this is almost any social support or knowing that there's other people out there that struggle with depression or anxiety or whatever it is. That could almost, it plays a pretty big role, I think, through all of the stages of change with depression. You know,
Definitely.
it helps you become more aware that other people have the problem. It helps you contemplate changing or taking steps to change, I should say, or maintaining that behavior. And so that's with depression specifically, that's something that works its way through all of the stages of change. And so that would be a really important intervention, social activities.
Yeah, that's true.
Or organizational activities, if it's an organization, that would be something that's really important to involve for this population.
Yeah, for sure.
Support groups.
Support groups, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool that you bring that up, because like now that I've gone through it, like I took medication, I did all of that, but now I'm off medication and I'm more towards like keeping my diet good and exercising and stuff. It's helped. But it's really cool because like now that I've gone through all of that, like I have teenage girls coming up to me asking me, hey, what did you do this? Like telling me like more of like knowing that I went through that, they feel more comfortable like if they're going through it to like confide in me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that they look up to you and they're like, well, wow, look at her. She's functioning and she's great. And I mean, we really look up to her anyways, and she went through this. So maybe we can get through it too.
Yeah.
It's good to have role models and people who have been there to kind of help you through it. Because it's one thing for people to be like, oh, well, I know it must be hard, but it's another thing for a person to be like, you know what? I've been in the situation that you're in, and I know that it's hard. And if you need anything, just ask me, and I can tell you what I know,
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're in that maintenance stage. I kind of was looking at the counter conditioning. You're looking for a substitution of healthier alternative behaviors. So you're finding like other ways to work with.
So I was on medication for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it kind of got to a point where I was like, I would take it every day. I just felt like it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. And I didn't want to go through the process of going through like depression medications, because with depression medications, it gets worse before it gets better. So when I first started taking it, I would have days when I would just plan my suicide. Like it got so bad. And I didn't want to go through that with changing medications. So I slowly got myself off medications and decided to really focus in on like, okay, what are things that really change the way I feel? Kind of like reevaluating myself. So like certain foods that I eat, like my canna frosting problem. If I ate too much sugar, that was a way where my depression was just out of control. I would be up and down all around the place. And then like eating like greens and vegetables and stuff, I felt consistent. I didn't feel like I was on a roller coaster ride.
Well, and then that, like, you have something that you can like be proud of yourself for. Like, wow, look, I ate all of my vegetables today and I feel better for it, So it's like positive reinforcement.
And then just like not bumping heads with what's going on or how I react that day. So like, or like kind of just accepting what's going on, letting myself feel it and kind of moving past it rather than denying those feelings and denying what I feel, because that kind of shows like, oh, well, my feelings aren't good enough to be recognized.
Yeah.
So that was another thing. So just having to like learn little things and little tricks here and there kind of brought me to the realization that I didn't need the medication anymore.
That's good.
So I'm wondering, Mercedes, it sounds like you have a lot of experience, but just from anybody, how much of an impact does environmental, so just thinking about interventions, environmental change strategies, how effective is changing your environment in helping your depression?
It was actually really important for me. So when I was at college with roommates, I had learned that, okay, well, staying in my room with the door closed brings on these certain feelings. So, or even just being in my room with the door open, like just feeling isolated or feeling alone in my room brought on those depressions. And so I figured, okay, well, I'm going to start doing my homework outside of the room, which also helped with my sleeping problem, because if you bring, so it's like a connection for your, of what like your feelings and your thoughts and your brain waves are. So if you do work inside your like bedroom and stuff like that, you get that connection emotionally and like with your thoughts, that's not a place to sleep. So it brings the difficult part of falling asleep, which was really hard for me. So
because I've heard people say that before, like, don't put a TV in your room because then your mind tells you that that's the place you watch TV, not the place you sleep.
Yeah, so I had to separate that. And that was very difficult, because like you want to watch Netflix in your room because you want to be cuddly on your bed. You want to like just do everything in your room. And so I started having to, instead of having the TV in my room, instead of doing homework in my room, I changed that completely. And I was in the living room most of my day. And the only time I was in my room was when I was sleeping. Another thing was helping myself fall asleep. So I had to bring out a routine with what I did before I went to bed and the lighting before I went to bed. So what I did was I started off, I'd brush my teeth, wash my face, get ready for, like, get clothes on for bed. I'd read my scriptures, pray. So what I do with the lighting is I actually had Christmas lights in my room. And so I would turn off the light, but turn on the Christmas lights so my eyes can get ready for bed. And then once I felt like I was in that part, slowly getting there, then I turn off my Christmas lights and I'd be able to fall asleep.
Cool.
So environment does really have a huge impact on like changing your behaviors, because that took me to be consistent in that maybe a month and a half, 2 months.
So that's probably more in the action phase, or did you use it more to kind of maintain change?
Yeah.
It was at first it was more of an action, but now that I'm off like medication, it's turned into a maintenance rather than an action.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it was initially an action and it has had good results, you know, so you've continued to use it as
Yeah.
Yeah, because the action stage is you've changed it for less than 6 months, and the maintenance is more than 6 months. So it's kind of like they just lead right into it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, like now I don't do the exact same routine that I do, but it's like, it's different, but it's more towards to where I'm at this point rather than where I was then.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
what other interventions would you guys apply in this situation?
I gotta pull up my intervention table. I can't find it.
I used it for another assignment today, so they're kind of fresh in my mind. So I'm like kind of thinking through where it's at.
Well, just name them all, figure it out.
Well, another one that I'm trying to think of how it would work would be health communication strategies.
I think that would go in the pre-contemplation.
Yeah, like for education,
just bringing
like,
awareness.
they don't know it's a problem unless they learn about
telling
it.
them the resources that they have, telling them the benefits that it could have. Yeah.
And not necessarily for this particular scenario where it's one person, but like the BYU campus or something, flyers, brochures,
Yeah.
call this number type thing. And then you could do the education one.
That's true. Yeah, and the health communication to me kind of has two parts, and maybe this is bringing in another the health community something mobilization. But between those two, I feel like communicating to people the positive and the negative of changing or not changing, and then also the resources to help change. Both of those are really important, especially for people with depression. Maybe like Mercedes, they'll just go and figure out what's, that they're diagnosed with depression, but maybe they won't unless they're told that they can do that.
Yeah.
There's actually, so when I was at BYU and I would go to, it's underneath the Wilk, and it's all about like, there's therapists there and different types of tests that you can do. But during the time I was there, they would have these anxiety classes and stuff like that, where they would have people go around campus just putting flyers up saying, look, like these are services are there for you. They would have events of like, hey, look, like, that we're here, or you can be tested for this, or you can be tested for that. Which was really interesting because I didn't know that until I was actually in it. But like, it was such a good tool because, I mean, first off, like it was free to those who went to BYU.
Yeah.
It was there. You didn't have to go to like an outside source. It was part of the school.
Yeah, and same with the counseling, the health services or whatever, the counseling at BYU Idaho, the same thing. I had no idea until, as a sign language interpreter, I went up there with another student, and he's like, oh, no, this is free. And I was like, oh, really? And it's free to students. There's lots of resources like that, I think. Yeah. You just need to know about it.
And I think that brings to mind like the barriers for that target population of students. So it's going to be like convenience and the cost. Like
college students.
It's right there and it's free. Yeah.
So health communication strategy is another one I think that would help a lot with the pre-contemplation phase, and even maybe the preparation phase, teaching somebody the steps that they can take to act about their depression. So
I honestly feel like communication strategies could be a part of every single one of these steps, just in a different form.
Yeah, that's true.
So, hey, we are coming up on an hour from when we started this recording. I don't know if you guys want to keep going with this and finish it up, or if you want to wrap it up.
Can we wrap it up? Because I have work at 3 a.m.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. So I will, let me stop the recording. I will get this posted onto the thing, and we'll go from there. I think
cool.
Fine. So
who wants to do next week?
Who's done it so far? I know Ashley.
I can do it next week.
Rhonda, Mercedes. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it next week.
Mercedes.
All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Right.
Hey, thank you guys.
All right.
Okay, good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.